Without further ado, the skills gap seems to dominate the news lately. But there's also a gap in our understanding about apprenticeship and the skilled trades, even as they gain new respect in the new economy. Award-winning education journalist Jennifer Lewington will now lead a panel of experts on the state of play in apprenticeship and the skilled trades. Please welcome Jennifer and our first panel.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Jennifer Lewington. I'll be the moderator for this panel. I thought I would start with a couple of fast facts that probably some of you know, but maybe not all of you know. One is that Ontario leads the country in the participation of young people in university, but lags in the participation of young people in the trades. Another fact is that the registration in apprenticeships are going up, but the growth in completion rates is not. And finally, as the Canadian Apprenticeship Forum has noticed, more than 70% of employers in skilled trades believe there will be a shortage of workers in their industry, but only 25% of them, but only 25% of them actually have a strategy for dealing with it. So it's against this backdrop that we're going to have a panel here of, I think, people who are actively involved in this issue and are going to have some things to say. I just want to begin with an introduction of the panel. To my immediate left is Serge Bai, CEO of the National Association of Career Colleges, and he's responsible for the organizational management and government relations for an organization. And as some of you may know, the private colleges do indeed do some pre-apprenticeship and apprenticeship training, but I think you might like to do more, right? Pat Blackwood is Vice Chair of the Ontario Colleges of Trades, and as a strong advocate for skills trade, he also has a lot of previous experience having worked for a number of the major labor unions in the country. And I think one of the interesting things that you may not know about Pat is that he has had to sit across the table from employers during labor negotiations and try to convince them of the value of investing in training and investing in apprentices and similar support for both workers they have and workers to come. And Sarah Watts-Reinhardt is Executive Director of the Canadian Apprenticeship Forum. And of course, she is, I think, a keen advocate in this area. But I think one thing that I think is important and may sort of lead us into the beginning of the conversation, she's also a parent. And so, like a lot of you, is concerned about opportunities for her to, I think, still teenage daughters, right? And the opportunities that they have. And how I think the school system still has a kind of, dare I say, antiquated view about the way that trades can play an important role in the careers of young people. I just want to, just before we get to the beginning of the panel, I wanted to say that we're going to have a discussion that's going to last for about an hour and allow then for some questions from the floor, from all of you, so we can kind of continue the discussion and find a way to sort of open it up for the panels to come. During the question period, I would make one request. Ask a question. No speeches. There'll be plenty of time for speeches later, but we don't have a lot of time, and I think if we can have some pointed questions from the floor, I think that would be very good. We will have a couple of HEQCO staff, I don't know if they're here or not, who will have microphones, remote microphones. They are both here. You maybe stand up and they're the ones with the microphones. So they will be moving around the room. So all you need to do is flag them down, raise your hand, and we can get going. So now I'm going to sit down. So I thought maybe we could start, first of all, panelists, with a sense of what are some of the roadblocks that are getting in the way of young people being able to get into trades, or for employers to be able to find trades. And maybe start with you, Sarah. And I'll ask all of you, but I'll start with Sarah. What for you are some of the most important roadblocks that are getting in the way for young people?
You know, I think we have to recognize that apprenticeship is a collaboration of stakeholders. It requires young people who are interested in becoming certified tradespeople. It requires employers who are willing to hire and train them. And it requires an education system and a regulation system as well. So you have educators and you have government. And that leads probably to a number of barriers, because all of those groups have to really be working in collaboration to take somebody from an untrained person to a fully certified journey person. And I think that means trying to educate youth, trying to tell their parents and their educators in the K-12 system about the value of being a tradesperson, the value of apprenticeship, sharing that information. But it also means that employers have to really be willing to take the chance and make the investment in taking someone who is unskilled and really giving them those opportunities in the workplace. With 90% of the training being done in the workplace, we really can't underplay the important role of employers and their commitment to the process.
Pat, what for you are the big roadblocks? Are they the same as Sarah's? Are there more?
You know, there's tons of roadblocks. One of the roadblocks is there's a lack of opportunities. You know, we talked that there's a shortage, but there really is a lack of opportunities for skilled trades apprentices. And here we are trying to get people to get into the apprenticeship program, but to try and match them with the opportunities, like you talked about the economist having a balanced the need for what you have wanting to come up. So that's an issue. There's a lack of opportunities. There's a lack of seats in many cases. We haven't had any training increases for money for seats in school training. So even when you do get apprentices, it's hard to get them into the schooling portion of the apprentices, which really is an important factor, because when you have your training in your school, then you go back into the workforce and you put that training to use. So if you're not getting your schooling, for whatever reason you can't get a seat, you lack that putting it together, okay? And generally you do your school, you go back into the workforce, you try and get the same type of training in the workforce. So that's a barrier. The problem that only 20% of the employers actually apprentice is a barrier, a big barrier. If we could increase that number to 30% or 40%, there wouldn't be a shortage of apprenticeships. Anybody that wanted to be an apprentice could be an apprentice. And I think the last thing I'd like to say is, I think there's really a lack of understanding of skilled trades as a whole. How do you become a journey person? How do I become an electrician? How do I become a pipe fitter? It's a real big secret out there, and it shouldn't be, because the Canadian Apprenticeship Forum has a website second to none. The Ontario College of Trades just started a new website for the youth. It's called Earn While You Learn, and was put together by a young person that put that website together. And it takes a person right through how you become an apprentice, how you have to find a sponsor, how you know, either a union sponsor or an employer, how you progress through the process, right? But it's really a map that kids don't understand, parents don't understand. And a big challenge I get, and I talked to you on the phone about this, but a lot of times parents want their kids to be apprentices, but the kids don't want to be apprentices.
Right.
So you want somebody that wants to be an apprentice.
So Serge, are you in agreement with this? Are there some additional roadblocks, or are these consistent with what you're seeing?
Yeah, I'll echo what Pat said about the youth not understanding skilled trades and not valuing skilled trades as well. And I think their parents are not valuing skilled trades as well. I was lucky enough to participate in a mission led by Minister Kenny in Germany and the UK earlier this spring, and it was very interesting to see the different view that people in Europe have about skilled trades and apprenticeships. They welcome the idea. It's about 50% of youth are actually in apprenticeships over there, and so it's a very different feeling. What I would say, you know, everybody talks about cooperation, and it's nice to talk about cooperation, and we keep talking about cooperation. But we keep having this debate about what's wrong and what can we do, and we have conferences after conferences after conferences. There's a conference here, there's another conference in another part of Toronto that's discussing almost the same issue. Earlier this spring, you had Minister Kenny that led a conference here in Toronto, and the provinces did another conference in PEI, and both didn't really want to speak to each other. And you know, it's slightly concerning when you're seeing that, and you're seeing our model that is not working properly, and you're looking at on the other side of the ocean in Europe, and you can actually even look in Asia, where you have the employers, the governments, the unions that are working extremely well, and the educators, by the way. I represent the education side, but the educators as well, that are participating, that are working together in collaboration together because they have one goal, being successful on this.
So, Sarah, what explains the resistance?
I think, I think on occasion it's a misguided turf war between
turf war,
yeah,
between...
absolutely. Well, let me explain. Between federal and provincial governments, between educational institutions. I represent the private educational sector, post-secondary sector, which is partially in apprenticeship, partially not in apprenticeship, depending, and because there is resistance to opening it up to the private sector, which is not at all in Europe an issue. There is turf war between employers who are actually thinking, well, if I put money in and invest money in the youth, will my competitor, who will not have those costs, be able to zoom in on that youth, take them and then move them around? So it's a bit of an issue where I think North America was founded on competition, and that's great, but we have to talk about collaboration as well.
Pat, is there a turf war?
Well, I was listening to Serge say the turf war. I guess there's turf wars in every situation. It's all about politics. Politics in offices, politics in employers, politics in unions, politics in government. But the bottom line is I don't think there's a turf war. I've been on several boards. One is the Canadian Apprenticeship Forum, and I'm currently on the Ontario College of Trades. And we have representatives from employers, we have representatives from education, we have representatives from union, representatives from non-union, we have an apprentice on our board. And if you were to come in the room and not know who was who, you would think we're all the same, come from the same cloth. Because we talk about apprenticeship. We talk about how can we get more youth in apprenticeship? How can we make the skilled trades better? And that's what the College of Trades really is trying to do, is elevate trades to be like a profession, like a doctor, lawyer, a nurse, you know, make it a professional level. And we're at our infancy, but again, on the College of Trades, or whether it's a Canadian Apprenticeship Forum, I was on that board when we had 43 members, and I was the chair at one time. But when you went into that room and we talked passionately about apprenticeship, all these issues Serge raised are all relevant issues, right? But the bottom line is if we all keep focused on how can we make apprenticeship better, we will make it better. But it does take everybody, government, educators, unions, non-union, everybody has to work together. But
the system is opaque, Sarah. What makes it opaque and for whom?
Well, I think that apprenticeship is, in post-secondary terms, it is the least linear way of getting from point A, not certified, to certification. It has barriers along the way, not only finding the first employer, which is a challenge for a number of young people, but staying employed throughout the process and really being able to gain those work hours, being able to progress, going back to school, going back into the workplace. And I think that because of that, the pathway is not straight ahead. It's not a matter of being able, as a guidance counselor or as a parent or anybody who is trying to influence or guide youth. It's a much more difficult path to talk about because it's not straight. It's not a matter of we're going to get you registered in this program and then 3 or 4 or 5 years later you're going to have a degree or a diploma coming out of the end.
So there's a lack of assurance that if I start down the apprenticeship road, I may not be able to get there.
I don't think people are starting with this idea that they wouldn't be able to finish, but I think we have to recognize that the requirement to be in school part of the time, in work, that we're actually putting a lot of challenges on on the apprentice to be able to find their first employer, to be able to stay employed, to be, gaining the skills in the workplace, being able to do the problem solving, bring all of their soft skills, all of their mechanical skills, all of their hard skills, all to work as an employee. And then at the same time saying, okay, and now we'd like you to go back to school, and we're back into a more regimented way of looking at books and looking at theory and being able to do testing. As what I'm saying is it's not a linear path. It's not an easy thing where you can see the beginning and you can see the end. And I don't consider that to be opaque, but I do consider it to be a challenge.
Right. Pat?
I think the difference there also is if you get into an apprenticeship through the unions or through the IBW, pipe fitters or contractor, big contractor, it doesn't have to be unionized, but where they have a program set up, they'll also have a program where that apprentice is supported right through the process. You can't put somebody in an apprenticeship and expect them to come out a journey person. That person needs guidance, they need support, they need a mentor, they need to make sure they're getting the full breadth of the trade. I don't know how many calls I got from apprentices that are working for employers that say, listen, I'm a first-year mechanic and I haven't done nothing but oil changes. Well, that's something wrong with the system. Like, there has to be something in the system to be able to make sure that doesn't happen. Like, an apprentice needs somebody to be able to call if they're in a small industry or small employer or medium-sized employer where they're not represented by a union or they don't feel going to the company, that they can call somebody that's going to come in and make sure that they get the full breadth of the trade. And that's the person that gets into the program. The other issue is finding people to get into the program.
But Serge, are there not special challenges for a small business in taking on an apprentice? If we could talk about some of the obstacles that are there for that kind of employer who may wish to take somebody on, but for various reasons they face some roadblocks.
Definitely for the smaller employers it's more difficult, and I don't think we can be very successful in changing that in the short term. I think some of them will make the investment required to get apprentices through, but we're more looking at the medium size and large organizations that are going to be involved in apprenticeship programs. I would say though that I'm not sure it is opaque. The process is opaque, and I'm not sure that. That youth cannot be attracted to this easily by clearly indicating what the result is, which is a job. When we went to Germany again, and I may sound like a broken record, but if you see it something that works, you actually want to think about what works and want to see if you can replicate some of it, because you can't replicate everything. We are a different system. But we met a 16 or 17-year-old young man who came and made a presentation to our delegation in Germany, and he was working in a company. He says, well, next 2 years, this is what I'm doing. Next 2 to 3 years, this is what I'm doing. I will be doing X, Y, and Z. I'm taking this training, working in this company. After 3 years, the company will make me an offer, and I will see whether or not I want to continue to stay with them. But I may go to such a company or to such another company, and this is my future. And we looked at the young man that had his whole future plan in his head already. And through this apprenticeship program, we knew exactly where he was going, we knew exactly what type of job he was getting in, we knew exactly the type of salary that he was getting in. It was quite interesting to see the employer reaction that was sponsoring him. They were clearly interested in keeping those young people. It was a bit of a different thing where you had the employers that said, we are interested in keeping this young man. While here it's the employers have a tendency to look at this and say, well, we're not sure we want to be involved.
So they see it as a cost, not an investment.
Some employers will see it a cost here, sadly.
Sarah, is that an issue here?
Sure. I mean, I think employers have to think about their business and have to think about a number of factors, not only human resources, not only the long-term interests of the skills in their workforce, but they have a number of other things that they've got to look at as well, and the economy and the opportunity to make money, and they have to go back to shareholders and so forth. So it's I think employers do have a variety of issues that they have to work through in terms of participating in apprenticeship. But the employers who are doing it, and 77% of Canadian apprentices are being trained in small and medium-sized businesses. So companies are doing this, and it is mostly small and medium-sized companies that are engaged. That is where apprentices are being hired. Probably as much because they're the least able to poach off of somebody else anyway. They don't have the same kind of resources. So they take someone in early and train them up and make sure that they understand their clients, their equipment, their culture, their other workers. And so we see employers who are extremely committed, but committed employers have a plan to take the argument, even a step further, like Serge is saying about this young man understanding what his pathway was. Good employers give their apprentices a pathway. They say, okay, this is where you're going to start. This is what your training's going to look like in the first 6 months. This is where we're getting to. And to be able to give people that pathway, to give them the mentorship and the support that they need, that can come from outside, it can come from a union, it can come from a joint apprenticeship training committee, it can come from an educator or some other place, a family or friends that are involved with the trade. But it can equally come from an employer, and great employers who know that this is the way you develop the skilled people you need. They are putting the mentorship and the training plans in place. And so it's a matter of giving all employers of any size that blueprint so they know what their responsibilities are, and they are not only recruiting and engaging the apprentice, but retaining them and moving them forward in the program.
Right. Do you think parents and teachers and others really understand what the potential is?
Well, we've done some studies over the last year with young people across the country, with parents across the country, and with educators across the country. And I would say that there are still stereotypes that are out there. We think we're recognizing when we compare what people are saying in the last year or so to what they were saying in 2004, we're making positive progress. There are a lot of great information is out there where people are going to get the information, they're finding it. Are there some things we have to do better? I mean, absolutely. Parents are saying, show us how we would connect our child who is interested in moving into an apprenticeship, show us how to get an employer. Give us the step-by-step. How do we find the employers who are interested in hiring? So we are seeing some positives, but we're also still seeing some stereotypes. Parents saying that they believe that the trades are physically demanding and not for girls. So do stereotypes exist? They absolutely exist. But I think we're seeing a lot more positive than we're seeing negative because the movement is in the right direction.
Pat?
Listen, I keep hearing this about the parents. Parents aren't the one that's going to do the apprenticeship. It's the kids. All right, so it's the kid that wants to.
But they influence them.
They may influence them, but they may not influence them. The kids need to pick their own course of action, what they want to be. And if a person wants to be an electrician and they set that as their course of action, they go out and find out how to become an electrician. If their mother phones me and says, how come my son can be an electrician? I answer that lady, I said, tell your son to email me and I'll let him know, because I'm not going to tell you. And that's the way I answered her, because the reality is, the kid has to look for the job. The kid is the one that has to get the apprenticeship.
But do they know?
Once they do get the apprenticeship.
But do they know
sure
how?
They know.
Okay, they're sitting in grade 10, grade 11. Do they really know?
Not all of them, but the ones that know that they want to be an apprentice certainly know. There's 400 or 500 people lined up at every local union hall trying to get on an apprenticeship program. And earlier you said that Ontario is now one of the lower, we're not the highest producer of apprentices. Well, that's because we lost 600,000, 800,000 manufacturing jobs in this province. And when those jobs left the province, we lost a lot of apprenticeship opportunities, right? And they haven't come back. Like the manufacturing jobs haven't come back to that degree. We haven't had an economic recovery, so we're still down. The construction trades, Build Force Canada and all the construction trades do a great job trying to predict what the workloads are, what type of apprentices we need, and try and have enough apprentices for the number of journey people that are leaving the workforce. They do a great job. The smaller ones, medium-sized businesses, and even say the forestry industry, the oil industry, the not oil, take that off. Mining industry. I'm talking about Ontario now, so I don't want to put oil in it right now. But they used to have sector councils. And the federal government got rid of sector councils. Well, sector councils had a role. Their role was to try and predict how many job openings is there going to be in our sector. Well, that sector councils lost their funding, like CAF did back in 2013, right? 12. All right, and that hurts. That hurts. And so for governments, and I'm not blaming the governments, but they got to take some of the blame. You can't take away, and I think the lieutenant said that today, that you have to have data. Well, you don't have data when you get rid of the people that collect that data, and you get rid of their ability to collect that data. And that takes away from trying to find out where these jobs are going to be. I know in the forestry sector there's going to be a lot of apprenticeship opportunities, but it's all fragmented because we've lost that continuity in bringing people together, and that's important.
So Sarah, on the college side, why are there shortages of spaces?
First, before I answer it directly, I do want to talk about the parents. I appreciate Pat's perspective. I respectfully disagree with him. I think the parents and the guidance counselors and a number of people act as influencers and provide a lot of ideas and thoughts to kids. And I believe that the trade, skilled trades, has not been appreciated as much as it should have been in Canada, and that probably creates a deterrent for young people to get into the trades. And that change and the perspective change, then you would see the parents changing, and you would see the guidance counselor changing as well. And I think that could change a little bit of perspective in getting more young people in those jobs. So I think the parents and the guidance counselors have to understand the importance of that. On your question, on the college, sorry.
Well, I want to pick up on that point, because Sarah made the point about the role of parents, but is it, I think Sarah was saying that it isn't just changing parent perceptions, parents need some demonstration of where this career is going to lead their child. So is that part of the issue too, that they need more information, or they need more access, or they need something to kind of make the convincing argument?
I think there are so many data that goes around. So if you look at the university sector, they will say that if you get a university education, while the salaries may be lower at the beginning, at the end, overall in your career, your earning potential is much greater than anything else. Okay, possibly. I'm not going to enter those debates. That's not really for me to do that. But if you look, then you go and go in different trades, and you look at starting salaries of $60, $70, $80, $90, and more $1,000. That's quite something, and you see a potential perspective. Owning your own business, developing X, Y, and Z, and moving forward. So there is strong potential on having that. So in terms of people not understanding the potential of the careers and the potential of where the skilled trades may lead you, I think there is an issue. Absolutely. In the past, I think people would say, well, I'll just call my plumber, and I'll get my plumber to do a repair, and the plumber was just a person coming there. Well, the plumber now owns a business. He's on my, as internet, is doing a number of things related to that, annual training and everything else. I think that's just fantastic, but we are not focusing enough on pushing on those ideas. Former Minister Diane Finlay, the former minister of HRSDC, talked about skilled trade professionals, and the emphasis there was on professionals and trying to professionalize the skilled trade and trying to provide the perspective that those are professional jobs, and they are.
So Pat, you're vice chair of the College of Trades.
Yes.
What's the role that the college can play in providing more information? Because I think at the moment you only cover 22 certified trades, is that right?
22 compulsory trades.
Oh, sorry, 22 compulsory trades.
In Ontario, there's 22 compulsory trades out of about 150.
Yeah, so I just wanted to pick up on Sarah's point. Is there a role there for the...
Yeah, we do have a role. We're one of the only self-regulatory bodies that have a role that part of our role is to promote apprenticeship, okay? And that's a big role, and our registrar David Tabucci has been around the province and is continuing to go around the province, all areas of the provinces, speaking to kids, going to schools, going to skills competitions, and promoting the skilled trades. But it's a double-edged sword. We're promoting it, but we don't have the opportunities, right? Or we don't have a clean path, right? That we keep talking about. And I just want to say one thing about Europe. I didn't get a chance to travel to Europe, and I've heard about the German system, and I think it's fantastic. But you know what? We live in Canada. Canada has 13 different jurisdictions. Each one of those are responsible for their own apprenticeship system. That in itself is a barrier. Okay, and we're working on that through the CCDA to try and come up with some type of harmonization of certain trades, the main trades that move across the province, to make sure that apprentices, where they can't complete in one province, can go to another province. That's to eliminate some of these people that can't complete. So that's one of our issues. We're not Europe. The average age of our apprentices is 28. I would say the average age in Europe is 16. Yeah, at 16, I know what I'm going to be. And again, I respectfully disagree on a parent, because I've dealt with parents. I've got a parent who got a hold of me and said, listen, I want to get my kid into an electrical apprentice. So I used a chit, and I got that guy a chance to write the exam in an electrical apprentice. Well, the guy backed out. He didn't even turn up to write the exam. Now, that made me feel terrible, because I actually made some calls to try and get this guy a little bit of an in, because I liked the guy. He figured his kid was just as good as he is. But you know what? If the kid doesn't want to do it, it's so important.
Yeah.
I talked to a guy from Nova Scotia, IBEW guy. He said that he had an apprentice quit 6 months into his apprenticeship. He said, I didn't know I had to work outside. Like, you know what, we have a different, we're not talking about the demographics here, but we have a different generation coming up here. This generation doesn't use their hands. They don't work on cars. They don't help fathers around the house, the majority of them, okay? They're on computers. They're techies. They're good at what they do. They can multitask. They can do this and that and all at the same time, but don't call me for dinner, right? I'm busy. That's a different generation, and it's hard to get to that generation. They don't have the same work habits as us. They don't have the same goals as us. They don't want to work 7 days a week. A tradesperson works 7 days a week. We work when people don't work. When the plant goes down, we work. Construction, they're out on construction when the daylight's long, you're getting 12-hour shifts. You're going to a changeover on a plant, you're in there for 12-hour shifts. Like, you know what I mean? That takes dedication. The new generation just isn't there. So if you don't have somebody that wants the job, I don't want the one that the parent wants them to be an electrician. I want the one that wants to be an electrician. And if that person wants to be an electrician, they're going to get over all the hurdles that has to take. And those hurdles are the education. You have to have your math skills. You have to have your sciences. And a lot of these kids don't have that because of our education system. A lot of them are, the essential skills aren't there. But if they want to be an apprentice, then they're going to upgrade those skills. And there's lots of ways of doing that.
But Pat, you can't want if you don't know. So you can't want to be an electrician if you have no idea what an electrician is and does and how exciting the job can be.
And I go back to the websites, because Sarah's website, careerintrades.com or whatever it's .ca, it was put together between Skills Canada and the Canadian Apprenticeship Forum. You can go on that website and see exactly what an electrician does. I think there's a survey on there. You check this box, this box, this box. If you don't like the climb, you don't want to be an arborist, and you don't want to be a power line technician, you don't want to be an electrician, you don't want to be a millwright, you don't want to be an iron worker, because all those jobs require climbing. You may want to be a chef, you may want to be a hairstylist, you may want to be something that you're standing on the ground. If you don't want to get dirty, then there's a lot of trades you don't want to get in, but everything that you do washes off, all right? And if you get a skilled trades, if you get a trade, you don't have to worry for the rest of your life. I wish every kid had to get a trade before they went to university or college, because then they'd have a trade to fall back on. I believe in skilled trades.
So now that we've libeled the millennials, I hope there are some here, I want to pick up a point I was going to ask Serge, and I'll ask Sarah to chime in too. When someone wants to become an apprentice, they're still facing roadblocks in terms of getting into a college program, public or private. So why is there a shortage of spaces in some parts of the country?
You know, I talk to our members who on occasion tell me that they're hearing that, and I've talked to employers as well who tell me that they're having an issue getting there, a youth that they've selected to go for an apprenticeship program at a college, or getting them in a college or something. So I think we are going to have to make some changes. And you know, it's the issue of the cross-provincial movement. It's an issue within the province of being able to recognize some programs. We have, as an example, we have pre-apprenticeship training institutes in Canada, and those are handled on occasion by career colleges. So that gives the first basis. It should normally give the first basis, but it's not recognized, and it's often not recognized as the first entry level for the first year or so of the apprenticeship. And it'd be nice if we were able to get a lot of the people that are going through to get their program recognized and move forward. So I think on this case, I think there needs to be a little bit more collaboration and work, and I think the College of Trade could certainly play a big role in that, needs to play a big role in that, but there needs to be a recognition that we need to open this up a little bit more, we need to be a little bit more forthcoming, and we understand that there's a lot of money at stake, and we understand that there's a lot of issues of, you know, we will do this versus you will do this. In the end, and you know, Pat, you mentioned when people get in the room that you participated, everybody wants to look, is working for one goal, the apprenticeship. Well, let's get to that. Let's really get to that.
We need that.
Let's really get and enable all the colleges that can deliver a very good product and can help the students, let them play a part of the process.
I think if we can increase the number of apprentices that are being taken on through having more employers engaged in apprenticeship, and that's another one of our roles at the college, is we're trying to engage employers into taking on apprentices. Now, if we get successful on that, we can increase it by 10 to 30%. That's going to create so many more opportunities. Now you're going to need more training deliverers, right? And the ones that we currently have are probably pretty well stacked, so you're going to have to look for other avenues. But you're also going to have to look for participation by the provincial government for support on the seats, because the provincial government does pay for the seats. And like I said earlier, they haven't increased the cost, which is putting more of a burden on the ones that are the training deliverers right now, because they're trying to provide the best training they can, and it takes equipment. You know how the trades have changed, the technology's changed. You got to always upgrade your equipment, and that's a cost, and you want to make sure you got apprentices to be able to utilize that cost. So there's a lot of things in it and a lot of money at stake, and I understand that everybody wants to be part of the training thing, but we need to have the apprentices first. It's a big, big thing. We have to get everybody on board. I'm not saying we don't have to talk to parents and trying to say, listen, if your son becomes an electrician, he's going to be able to come to your house for free instead of $250 just to show up at the door. You know what I mean? Like, I can't see why parents don't understand that trades is a good, viable career. Bring a plumber to your house for 5 minutes to fix a toilet. $250, thank you very much. You know what I mean? Like, nobody makes that kind of money, not even lawyers, unless you're on Bay Street. But anyhow, and we're close to Bay Street, so I better watch it.
So Sarah, you're with a national organization. Do you see variations across the country in terms of access to the education seats for apprentices? And
absolutely. Yeah, I mean, there are variations, but we have to, I mean, we recognize that if you think about a workplace, there are probably times in the year where it's convenient to send somebody to technical training, and there are times in the year when it is not convenient to send people to technical training. You know, the educational systems, the educational institutions are built around a 12-month window, and to make you know, opportunities available for apprentices to come in. Not every apprentice in one trade can come in the same 6 or 8 or 10-week block to do that training. So I think that some of the tension around availability of the training also has to do with, I'd like to do it in January and February, and I don't necessarily want to do it when it would be less convenient for my employer, because the employer also does not want to let their employees go at a time when it's busy. So you think in some trades, and you know, particularly around some of the trades like construction, which now I recognize is happening 12 months a year, but there are times in the year that it's less convenient to do that work. It's more convenient to go to school for both the employer and the apprentice. And so, you know, one of those challenges I was saying about there are so many different players. The collaboration of those players I do see happening. I see that happening across the country. And real effort being put into it, but we've got to recognize that that's a reality in education and a reality in the employer, for employers, that we've got to overcome.
Serge and then Pat.
Yeah, let's face it, we have 2 provinces Alberta and Newfoundland, who for reasons of natural resources and prices of oil, which may change, have had a huge demand on skilled trades. And as a result, they looked at their trades programs and the delivery of the trades programs in their own provinces, and they've made significant changes. They've opened it up. They've gone to various participants and various stakeholders, including the educational institution, and say, we need to get more people in, we need to get more people through, we need to be more flexible in the delivery of our programs, we need to be X, Y, and Z. And they've done a fairly good job at it. Mm-hmm. They've actually moved, pushed, bullied their way through things, and they've actually opened them. In those two provinces, private career colleges offer apprenticeship programs. In Ontario, I understand the economy is different, and I understand we had a number of issues. The hope is that the economy will turn around and we will have changes in our economy. So we can do one of two things. We can wait for the economy to turn around and say, oh, well, we have a problem. We don't have the properly trained people. And then we're going to have the problem in supplying a booming economy for whatever reason, being natural resources, being renewable resources or anything. And then we'll look at that. No, we have to get to changing our educational system, which we forgot to do. Or we can actually be proactive. And we can look at systems that have worked in other parts of the country and say, hey, we need to address this. We need to address this now. And we need to make the changes to make it more flexible. And I think that's probably the avenue that we should take.
Mm-hmm. That's why I stayed off oil, because oil's got deep pockets and we're paying for it, $1.30 a liter. And that's why they can do that, and that's why they can go into the colleges and help get they can assist in getting their program. We had 20% of the employers that are apprenticing. If those other 20% came on board and put the money into the colleges and helped out the same way you're talking, we wouldn't have a problem. That's the issue. The issue is out west, they have to have trades. They need trades. And the oil companies have the money that they can go into the schools and they can put the programs on. That's a different story. We have a place here in Ontario, it's called ApprenticeSearch.com. All right? They used to put employers and apprentices together.
This is in
Ontario.
Halton region? Or?
Yeah, 1,000 people a year. They used to find jobs in apprenticeship. The government canceled that program.
Okay, but then if the government canceled, is no one willing to pay for it? Is an employer?
Well, now we have to try and come up with funding. And all I'm saying is that the government speaks out of two sides of the mouth sometimes. Sometimes they say their apprenticeship's the most important thing to this economy in our province. Yet at the same time, they're cutting a group out that actually puts people and employers together. And I think there's a way of stepping out and stepping back without completely walking out. And that's one of the issues. The same thing happened to CAF back in 2012. And luckily, we survived. Luckily, we now have some federal funding because through projects and stuff like that. And we're working together collaboratively. And we are doing a great job across Canada promoting apprenticeship in every province.
So Sarah, we've talked about some roadblocks, we've talked about some issues, and we've just talked about some things happening in Alberta and Newfoundland. But is there an impetus for change? Do you see evidence that people want to, are ready to change the status quo?
I think that based on my conversations really across the country, I really get the sense that those conversations are going on all the time. Recognizing the workforce is changing, the trades are changing, the technology is changing. So the flexibility to the systems always are slow to change, but apprenticeship particularly, we see there is that constant pressure to keep up. And I really do see movement in all the stakeholders to be flexible and to adapt to what's going on. So I do feel as though that's there. Now, we could argue about different institutions and what their role should be in different provinces and so forth. But I do recognize that trades programs are not uniformly resourced. So it's to be honest, some of these institutions have to put a lot of money in keeping that technology up to date, making sure that their instructors are up to date, have the constant contact back with the employers, back with what's going on, so that they're really on top of their game. And then there are going to be some of the programs that don't require so much equipment, don't require as much overhead, And I think that it's a real challenge for every government when they're thinking about how they're financing seats to recognize if you're looking at the overall system, you're looking at trying to make it so that it is not one institution is taking on all of all of the programs with a lot of overhead and a lot of cost to them, and none of the ones that are cheaper to deliver.
Right.
You have to try and find that happy medium where apprenticeship training is happening and it is not causing any kind of undue pressure on the deliverers of the training.
So no one group shoulders the burden alone.
Well, and this is the point. If you think about education, I think the education sector particularly has a lot of pressure on it to deliver online programs and blended learning and look at how to adapt some of those programs to suit the needs of employers, to suit the needs of apprentices, and to suit the need of emerging technologies and emerging skills requirements within the trades. And I don't believe that decisions can be as easy as, well, everyone who wants to get in to be a training delivery agent should be able to get in, because those decisions are being made at a higher level, and there's some balancing to happen in terms of making sure that those that are engaged in both programs that have more overhead requirements and ones that have lower overhead requirements. So
Pat,
I think there's that balance.
Pat, you were jumping.
A couple things. One thing is what happened in Ontario was we lost in-shop classes back in the 90s. I think it was the Harris days, if I was correct. But anyhow, the in-shop classes came out of the high schools, and that really took a route away for kids that wanted to try something different than college or university, right? But now we have Skills Ontario, Skills Canada, which really makes me excited to see all these young kids doing the trades. And if you see a commercial on TV, it's put on by the big oil companies who have lots of money. And they did a great job with that commercial for Skills Canada because it shows the skilled trades and how great it can be. And that's for the parents to see that it can be a great thing. But how do you make a parent understand that skilled trades is good? The problem is, one of our problems, is that our people that are coming into this country now to become part of our population are coming from other countries and other areas that maybe skilled trades in their countries wasn't deemed to be a high-paying job. And I don't know that, okay? But it's a whole new group of people that we have to convince that skilled trades is a good, viable career in this country, all right? And I honest to God, I feel so good when I talk to a young person who's got an apprenticeship. I said, you just won the lottery. And I said, I don't care what the apprenticeship is. Honest to God, if they're happy and they're doing a trade, then I'm happy because I know they're going to be fine. I know they're going to be able to go anywhere across Canada, especially if they get their red seal, if it's in their CFQ, that they can travel across Canada if they wanted to go, because it is mobile. And our youth of today don't have to stay home. They'll go anywhere, right? We look at Canada and we look at ourselves as being Ontario, Canada. People from the rest of the world look globally. They don't look just in Canada. They don't look just in their province. They look globally. In Jamaica, or these third world islands down there, they create tradespeople for the world. Not for their own island, for the world. Yeah. We look differently here. We're not Europe. I wish we were Europe, but we're not. And to get that, no, but hang on, but to change that, that's going to take a lot of work to get everybody to think like Europe.
But the issue, Pat, is, and you keep saying we're not Europe, and that's fantastic to say that. We are indeed not Europe. But by saying on a repeated basis we're not Europe, is saying we actually don't really want to look at that model. We have our model here, and we actually want to just continue, and we want to make it better. We'd love the government to pour in huge amounts of money into this and everything else. It's not going to happen. Government are facing huge deficits. Well, you've criticized governments for the number of cuts for those things, and I'm not here to defend the government. You know, we've got our own issues with governments, but the issue is we're facing deficits. You've got the healthcare sector, transportation infrastructure requirements. You're facing a whole bunch of situations that are drawing on the public purse, and indeed the government is going to make decisions that are going to be affecting every sector. And they're doing so. So we can sit here and say, well, we wish the government was going to come up with a big bag of money and pour it down. It ain't going to happen. And yes, we're not Europe, but we could take some elements of their system and try to adapt them to ours and make it successful. And there are some elements that could be adapted here, and that includes, by the way, the collaboration between the unions, the educators, and the employers, which is not happening in Canada.
And we're going to put a training plan in place. We're going to equal. I mean, this is
Well,
both partners coming together to support an apprentice and support apprenticeship. I'm not saying it's across the board. I'm not saying it's systemic, but I think there's lots of good things to learn from other countries. I don't think it's just Europe. I think there are other countries that have something to teach us. But I think we also have to take into consideration there are 13 different systems, but there are lots of great things going on in Canada. And sometimes we forget to look for the value in our own pockets and try and build and adapt those to suit a different trade, a different jurisdiction, a different sector. Sometimes we forget that because we're Canadians. So if it's happening somewhere else, it must be better than here first. And we sometimes forget to look at what's going on that is really valuable. So.
And it's a whole different culture.
Yeah.
And I'm not opposed to taking what's good from that culture and try and bring it over here, but to try and bring the whole thing over is never going to happen.
No.
Right.
And I think we'd be doing a pipe dream there.
Agreed.
And I'm not opposed to change, and I'm certainly not opposed to change. And we have a place in what do you call it? I forget where it is, Vaughan maybe. It's called Magna. And I don't know if anyone here has ever seen the Magna Training Center, but Magna Training Center, they do the German system here in Ontario.
Right.
So when they register their apprentices, they register them here in Ontario, but they also register them in Europe. So when a person finishes the Apprentice Training Center in Brampton, they do 2 years in there, 2 solid years of apprenticeship training in the training center. But the training center is just like a small plant where they have presses, they have a shop where they work in, they have their own benches, they do their own sweeping, they do their own cleaning, they put them up in houses, they pay people that are married more money than the single people, and this is the non-union side of it, but they do a good job. And the apprentices pay $3,500 or something to pay for their tools and that kind of stuff. But what I'm saying is they brought the German system here, and when that person graduates, they get a CFQ from Ontario, but they also get a certificate to work in Europe, which is thinking beyond the border of Canada.
Right.
And that's the way Magna is, okay? So there's no reason why we can't change, and there's no reason why we can't take some of those things and bring them into the system. But to say we don't have collaboration is totally false, because the unions work with the government, the union works with colleges, the union works with the training delivery agents, the union works with Skills Canada, the union works with College of Trades, the union works with everybody. The non-union people work with us. We do have people that maybe don't want to go with the flow, and they may be the people that are in the underground economy that don't believe in certification, don't believe in apprenticeship, all right? Maybe they believe in just being able to do the job and leave me alone. We don't want any regulation whatsoever. But if the house falls down, if the sky blows up, they don't care, all right? But we do care, because we have a responsibility to the public to protect public safety, and that is our mandate, and that's why there's 22 compulsory trades. We're going to make sure that the people performing those trades are competent, that they have a CFQ, that they have proper registered apprentices. Like I said before on my previous job, I get calls from apprentices, and the guy goes, I'm an apprentice pipe fitter. I said, oh, that's good, you got it made, man. I'm happy for you. He says, yeah, but I never go to school. I said, what do you mean you don't go to school? He said, I've never been to school. I said, did you ever sign a registered training agreement with the ministry? And they said, no. I said, well, you're not an apprentice, pal. I said, they may be calling you an apprentice, but you're not an apprentice. And I don't know who he's working for or what he's working for, but I really felt bad for that guy, all right?
So this actually plays into sort of the final segment we want to talk about, because we've been talking about the roadblocks and the stereotypes and all the problems. I think it's time to talk about some solutions. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to start with you, Sarah. For you, what are some of the quality measures that are going to have to either be expanded or, if they don't exist, introduced to provide assurances for the various players, be they the student, the prospective apprentice, the parent, the employer, and I'd like all of you to have, kind of jump in on this, but I'll start with you about, how do we ensure that there is sort of a quality delivery and a quality content and a quality outcome?
Well, I go back to my previous point. I think that there are some really great programs that are going on. I recognize there's isolation between groups. Either they're working in a trade, they're working in a sector, they're working within one jurisdiction, and perhaps aren't well known beyond that. But that's where collaboration and the ability to share what's going on, the ability to share best practices, where you see groups coming together like the Canadian Council of Directors of Apprenticeship, where you have some connections with the regulators. And there are a number of really good things, I think, going on across the country when it comes to reaching out to parents. I see all kinds of programs that are working when it comes to youth apprenticeship. And, you know, the Ontario Youth Apprenticeship Program is one of those. It's, you know, they actually have the coordinators in the school boards who are reaching through the schools to youth, to parents, to educators, and sharing information. Is it enough? Could we do more? Clearly there's more to be done. But I think that it's where we try and take what is working and expand on that, rather than constantly looking outside for new solutions. Because I really believe all kinds of things are happening across the country with different stakeholders, different groups, different, you know, I've been thinking about Aboriginal students and thinking about you know, what's happening when we're trying to reach out to parents, or what we're trying to do when it's about, you know, overcoming some of the obstacles to making the connection between employers and between apprentices. Canada has its solutions. It's not very good at sharing them. It's a big country, and we do tend to think our problem is the only one. And so we're trying to come up with a unique solution to our unique problem. And an organization like the Canadian Apprenticeship Forum, I mean, it's my job to go out and talk to people and say, okay, so what are you doing? How are you overcoming that problem? And trying to make connections between groups so that we're not just the educators are in a room talking to other educators. They're in a room talking to employers. They're in a room talking to the regulators. They're in a room, you know, talking to the unions. I mean, if that collaboration happens and those best practices get shared, I really have I have high hopes. I've seen connections being made. I've seen collaboration happening, and I've seen somebody say, "Aha! You have a solution to my problem. How am I going to adapt it here?" And I see that just needs to be done more.
Pat?
I see in Ontario, especially with the College of Trades, a perfect example to try and really improve the system, because that was the whole goal in the first place. Number one, to elevate it to a professional standard, professional level, which I think it's doing, to allow us to get out there and do the making it a viable career choice for people, and getting out into the talking to the parents, talking to the students, being part of the community, talking to the different stakeholders. And I think, really, we were given a mandate to regulate the trades, yet we weren't given the full mandate. A full mandate would be that we would register the apprentices, we would guide the apprentices through the process. If there's an issue with an apprentice who's in a shop, for a one-man shop or a two-man shop, and that apprentice isn't getting any exposure to the full breadth of the trade, they should be able to call the college, especially if it's a compulsory trade. Because at the end of the day, that person could lose his certificate of qualification if they do something wrong. All right, and endanger the public. So I think there's an obligation on the part of the employer to make sure that apprentice gets proper training, and it would give the apprentice somewhere to go. Right now they call the ministry, and the ministry really doesn't kind of taking a hands off on that right now. They don't think it's their role. And I think it has to be somebody's role, and especially since we're the self-regulatory body and we're the body that's responsible for enforcing that people are properly trained and they're doing their job properly and protecting the public and the public interest, right? Then maybe at some point in time, I'm not saying it's going to happen, but maybe at some point in time, if it were to happen, where we actually got to register the apprentice and guide them through the process, it would be a much more, it wouldn't be as fragmented. Right now it's fragmented. They get registered by the ministry, they have to become a member of the college, but they really don't see us until they get their CFQ. Then we give them the CFQ, right? We are part of the curriculum, we're part of the training standards. We have a fully transparent website. There isn't anything that's gone on at our college that isn't on our website, and I'm talking ratio reviews, classification reviews, anything that's written, any regulation that's changed, any board meeting, any minutes of anything is on that website. And it's a perfect website for youth to go on and find out about apprenticeship, how do I become an apprentice, that type of stuff, just no different than CAF. CAF's website, there is that avenue to do that. I think there's all kinds of opportunities. I think the College of Trades is at its infancy. It's only 1 year, just over a year and a half. I think 10 years from now it's going to be a great organization, great institution, and it's going to really create more employment in the trades for apprentices. We don't train like colleges, all right? We're never going to be training like colleges, but we're going to be the catalyst and the group that gets that person through the process and makes sure it's more seamless from schooling to finding them to an employer, that type of thing.
Serge, from a private college point of view, how do you ensure quality, both content and and outcomes that would provide more assurances for people about what the student is getting, or and so on.
It's in the same way as the public sector.
Yeah.
You know, the programs are approved by the provincial governments. They're regulated, audited, verified, etc. If you want to open a private career college today, welcome to the most demanding bureaucratic process ever in terms of business. You know, you will be inundated with forms. You know, it almost requires a bureaucrat to become a private career college owner right now, with the amount of paperwork that you need to do in order to provide that those assurances. So in terms of the assurances, the quality assurances, I'm fine with what we're seeing. I'm happy, and I'm actually proud of the work done by our members. You know, we have some of our members here actually in the room that are doing a fantastic job in helping people in different sectors of the education. Some of them on pre-apprenticeship training, and we'd like them to be able to do more. And indeed, in this country, we have wonderful things that are happening. You know, I'm looking at Newfoundland, one of our members in Newfoundland that worked in partnership with the First Nation and the mining company. And let me take 2 seconds, because I think it's important for people here to hear that example. You had a mining company that required a good number of people in the trade sector to work in their mine, and they were in a community where unemployment was about 85%. They were going to pay for the training of the people going for this, and they created an agreement with a community college, and that didn't work for whatever reason. I won't get into that. But then they brought it one of our members who actually started developing partnerships with the with the Aboriginal community in there, and they ended up developing a number of programs, and now a number of the people from that community just on the ground, instead of importing people from different places, people from that community starting to be able to get good long-term employment, meaningful jobs. And the unemployment ratio now is completely turned around in that community. And this is a type of partnership, those are the type of solutions that are working in our country. And yeah, indeed, we may not have to look, you know, thousands of kilometers away. We may just want to look at our colleagues in other provinces and see how they work, and see how innovative they've been, how great they've been to develop real solutions to existing problems in order to provide meaningful employment to people who really deserve it.
That sounded like a speech, but that was good.
Pat, does it make any sense to think about bringing back the sector councils that you thought were doing a good job?
Well, you know, there was some that survived. All right, the ones that survived, industry supported it, and then they're still alive. And I couldn't tell you which ones are still going and which ones aren't going. But all I'm saying is that I didn't see it as being a positive as far as keeping a track on the numbers of jobs available. Okay, as far as getting a picture of what the snapshot of what's available out there. Right now, we're kind of running ad hoc. Again, if you go on the Build Force Canada, they have a great presentation. They talk. If you go on any of our ratio reviews that we had at the college, and you read what the submissions by the IBW and the pipe fitters and that, when they talked about trying to change the ratios and that, they talked about how many journey persons they have, the average age, how many apprentices they currently have, how many they take on a yearly basis, whether it be 1,000 or 2,000. That's a big number. But anyhow, those types of figures you can actually see. So if I was a young person or a parent thinking, well, what am I going to get into here? And if I went on that website and seen that, hey, electrical looks pretty good. Everyone wants to be an electrician, by the way. Whenever anyone phoned me, they always want to be an electrician. I said, what do you want to be an electrician for? There's other trades out there. There's so many trades out there. You know, I talked to a stonemason today. He built the steps at the CIBC Commerce there when he was 21 years old, came over from Scotland. Those steps are still in place. I was proud sitting with that guy. I'm going to go over and look at those steps today. Anybody wants to come, they can. But anyhow, I forgot my train of thought now.
Well, anyway, but I want to turn it to Sarah, because we are trying to talk about solutions here, and you're talking to people across the country. When it works, what are the steps that occur when you are successfully able to engage, particularly a small employer, as someone who's going to take on an apprentice? Because I think that small to medium-sized sector, clearly there's a question about the support that they need. So when it works, what's happening?
You know, I think that one of the most impressive things that I see when I go out, and one of the things I'm really get juiced by the most, is seeing the commitment that happens. But so much of that has to do with a passion. It has to do with a belief. I mean, it starts with an employer who was an apprentice. It starts with a tradesperson who wants to mentor the next generation. And I can't instill that in someone who doesn't have it. But we can share, I think, that passion, and we can share the story, and we can make a good argument based on not just belief, but that's where it always starts. So it's like, if you want to see an employer who is actively engaged in apprenticeship training, it started with a person who said, I was an apprentice, I am a tradesperson, I'm proud to be a tradesperson, and I want to pass on that knowledge and those skills to somebody else. And then it's about making it work. It's about trying to find somebody with the right attitude. It's about connecting with a young person, to Pat's point of view, to Pat's point, about they want to be there. This is something that they see themselves doing. It's something that fulfills their requirements. A trade is not just a job. A trade is a calling in many ways. You see the creativity and the ability to problem solve in 3D. I mean, so much of it has to, I think, starts with a real passion and a real commitment. Now, you've got to tell people it's available to them before they're going to know and they're going to be able to identify it. But I see that, and then I see the ability to be able to take that forward to perhaps employers who aren't participating, and being able to show them there is also a good business case. It's not as though employers are losing money by investing in apprenticeship. It's a matter of we need to have those champions stand up and say, here's why I do it. And by the way, there is a really good business case for this, and be able to show that.
But Pat's going to jump in. But
I'm
Mike,
not, I'll wait for my turn. I'll wait for my turn.
He's just going to agree with me anyway.
No, but I want to frame the question I want to put to Pat, and that is, you just talked about something that's really kind of individual dependent. Is there any system-wide lever that someone or others have to pull, Pat, that are going to do more than simply have the one-off good experience that's going to make that you're talking about a very slow process.
We have an example in the Hamilton area, the consortium, where they have a consortium where the apprentices go beyond a number of employers. And the reason for that is, number one, is no one employer wants to take on the responsibility of the apprentices, so they get registered through the consortium. They go through this process, they go to the different employers and they work, and they got this system set up in Burlington area, and it is working. And that type of process could really be a catalyst in other areas where there's single employers that don't want to take on their own apprentice. But if you can get a bunch of employers to do it, and then when I was in the union part of it, negotiating, we could have done the same type of negotiation process where you have a lot of small employers in an area that don't want to take on a full apprenticeship program. We could share them between the employers. That would be a good idea. The last thing I like to think that would be a positive to get off this thing about employers not training is, in Quebec they have a levy, a 1% levy. It's a tax levy for training. Now, if you don't train, you don't get to draw on that levy. But if you do train, you get to draw on that levy. And I don't think it's just for apprenticeship. I think it's for any type of training. And I think we need some type of system like that in Ontario to try and get these employers off center ice, okay? Because out in Alberta, fine, things are great. The oil things doing great. But when that oil price drops, and they had a little bit of economic downturn there for a while, those people got laid off, and those people that were making big bucks, they suffered fast because they had these big bills to pay. They're living on a different standard of living out there, and they suffered fast. So as long as things are going good, it's okay. But when things die down, it's a different story. So we need something that's going to be long-term. We need something that's think outside the box. Consortiums is a good idea. And a tax levy in the province to get employers more engaged in training, because it's not just training apprentices. Journey people need training too. Technology is changing every day of the week out there, and you've got to keep abreast of that new technology. The last thing a tradesperson wants to do is go up to a piece of equipment and not know how to fix it.
And
not know how to fix it. That's the last thing they want to do. Most tradespeople want to know, they want to learn, they want to be educated, they want to be kept up to date. There's a certain amount of self-education you can do, but there's other education that the employer needs to bring on because it's specific to a piece of equipment or something like that. So you need to have that type of training in-house. You know, not just a rep coming in saying, this is what the replacement part is for that, this is the replacement part for that. They want to know how to fix that piece of equipment, how to troubleshoot it, how to correct the problem when there's a call. Because it could be a hospital, it could be a nursing home, it could be somewhere
Sure.
where people's lives are at danger. So our tradespeople, any tradespeople out there want to be able to do a good job.
Serge, we're going to talk about solutions, so.
Well, I do agree with Pat. You know, it's a little bit more than apprenticeships as well. It's training in different sectors. And when you look at what the government has done recently, I mean, on top of increasing the amount of the grant for the apprenticeship programs, the tools and everything, which was, I think, a very good idea, they've also developed the Canada Job Grant. And in Ontario, it's Employment Job Fund, because we needed to find a different name in Ontario. To make it different. So soon we're going to start sounding like Quebec by finding our little different niches here. We have the Canada Job Grant, which enables employers to put in some of their own resources while still getting a bit of government support. So it's an enticement to actually get the employers to put a little bit of their skin in the game. And it's a start. It's not the be-all and end-all for the solutions, but it's a start to get employers to think, well, if we put a little bit of our own money and the government is going to kick in another X amount of money, that's not a bad thing, and maybe we can get the training that we need, and maybe we can help some of our employees or future employees to get the jobs that they want. And I think those little steps that governments are taking are little steps, because we don't have unlimited resources, and as a taxpayer, I don't really want us to have unlimited resources to throw at everything. But those are little steps that are actually going to make a dent in that issue. And I'll talk about Manitoba. The program was released within a week. All the funds available in Manitoba were fully committed for that program within a week. So employers in that province, within a week, all put some of their money in order to do that. In Ontario, I don't know. The program got launched a month ago. I think the forms finally got out not too long ago, and finally we're seeing some movement a little bit, quite delayed. But that shows that employers in Ontario as well will be participating, are putting things, a little bit of their skin in the game, and that's an enticement that I think will continue to progress.
So I know Pat wants to jump in just very briefly, and then I'm going to turn it over to the floor.
I'll wait.
Really?
You'll wait, okay.
I'll try not to lose
All right,
that thought.
So this is now your turn, everybody, to ask questions. We have Carrie and Hillary who are going to, so hands up. So this gentleman in the front row, maybe you could just identify yourself, and if you want to pose it to one person, please do so.
Good morning, my name is Alex McDougall. I'm the OEAP coordinator for the Upper Canada Board, but before that I worked 30 years in industry with large manufacturing, pulp and paper that Pat alluded to, that closed. One of the things I have 22 high schools from Gananoque to the Quebec border.
Remember, we're going to do questions, not a speech, questions.
We
only have about 20 minutes. So.
What is your position or opinion on the Ministry of Education pumping more money into technological education in our high schools due to the lack of shops that you alluded to, Pat? I have 22 high schools. I don't have an electrical shop. How do we expect our students to get interested in shops and trades without our shops?
Good question.
I could answer that as far as what Newfoundland did. Newfoundland did a study, and they actually put the shops back into the high schools, and it has worked. And as you can see, there's success out in Newfoundland. But they actually realized that that was a major error that they made, and they have gone to correct that. So how do you make the ministry do that? I don't know.
Anybody else?
I think that it's, we have to recognize exposure is such an important part of understanding whether or not this is going to be a career path that's going to turn the light on for a student. In many ways, I think that my daughter, who took shop class through high school, it made the difference for her in terms of her math, in terms of her science, her ability to recognize that all of the things she was learning could be applied in a way that she better understood. And I hate to see that opportunity is not available to every student. But that's going to be something that, again, you know, the system has to recognize that if you want people who are going to be able to do this kind of job, you got to turn the light on for them. If it's sitting in a dark corner and no one can see it, no one can go toward it either. They're always going to go where they can see. I think that's one of the reasons we see people who are interested in the trades going toward the electrical trade. I mean, it's one of the trades that's most visible. It's one of the ones that people know about. If you knew about being a Boilermaker, you might think it was something that you wanted to do. But if all you know is plumbing, welding, and electrical, then that's where we're going to find there's the most interest. And I think the only way to do that is to give people an opportunity to learn with their hands in the high schools.
We have a question in the center of the room. If you could just state your name and a brief question.
Hi there. I'm Nobina Robinson with Polytechnics Canada. As an opening panel, this is great, and I congratulate HEQCO for bringing this issue out. Everyone and all that you've said about attracting people to the trades and the young people in the shop class, can we talk about completions? Is that an issue? And I ask Pat and I ask Sarah, from your expert points of view, is completion, is gaining more people who are certified as journey people in the various trades, is that a challenge in this country? And is it a bigger challenge than attracting more young apprentices? What happens if we don't have the journey people to train the next generation?
I think it goes to the data, and where do you have the data, whether you're getting good data on whether the person, why they quit the program, whether they left the program because they got laid off. That, you need to have that kind of data. Because if you talk to the IBEW or the Pipefitters Union that have their own joint apprenticeship training program where they assist the apprentices to get through the program, you have a much better success rate on completion. If you look at industry, where I came from on a unionized shop, where we had joint apprenticeship programs and we had apprentices in the plant, every apprentice is complete. Everyone, 99% completed, because they had that support throughout the system. But if you listen to what I said earlier about an apprentice that's out in the sea of apprenticeship out there, he's working in a small job and shop, he's not getting the support. Maybe he got laid off at a dealership. Now he needs another RTA, which is a training agreement. So how do I get that? He's got to go back to the ministry. He's got to find another sponsor. That's why people aren't completing. Or people may be not completing because they've changed from one trade to another trade. Some people get into a trade and they find, hey, I'm not an electrician. I'd rather be an arborist, climbing trees and cutting branches down. It's a bad problem if you look at the numbers, but I don't think it's as bad when you're into the process itself.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's pretty clear that if you have 400,000 registered apprentices in the country, and the completion rate is about 50%. Now, that is not the same in every province, and it's not the same in every trade, and you know, it does come down to an individual's decision whether or not it's the right thing for them. You wouldn't expect somebody to start a university program and then just continue doing it because they were there and they actually realized it's not for them. And so I think all post-secondary has some attrition that you could reasonably expect. But if we could complete more of the people who actually registered, I'm not sure we would have the kind of skills gap that we're really talking about. And so overall, yeah, completion is absolutely an issue. But to Pat's point, we don't have the data to know what happened to them. Are they fully employed, fully engaged in the workforce, and just don't need their C of Q to be where they want to be in the workforce? Or is it a matter of they've dropped out? Is it because they're not connecting with their next job? We don't have enough data to know what happened to people, to know whether or not. We know it's a problem, I just don't know that we know how to fix it. That's what
there was a huge number in that study, that RAISE study, 15% or whatever, that there was no reason whatsoever provided why they didn't complete. Absolutely no reason, nothing.
I'd like to provide a quick answer, Robina. I know that you've asked for expert opinion. We do have actual data on certain things and local data maybe. But if you remember the Newfoundland example I gave for that mining company, the reason they switched type of educational institution is because the completion rate with the first one that came in, the community college, was about 7%. Within that community, the native community, it was about 7%. One of our members came in and it became 82%. That's a fairly significant change. And why the change? It was because the career college had a stake in this. They did not have huge government grants to pay for whatever happened, regardless of the outcome. They actually only made money if the outcome was successful completion. So they had innovation in their program. They had flexibility in their program to suit the needs of the students. And in that Native community, it actually meant you stop classes when there is a reindeer hunt. You actually do. And you move on and you start it over again. But the completion rate completely changed and enabled the students to actually stay there and be successful. And I think the innovation, the flexibility of the program, the need to cater to your clientele, I think does make a difference in that.
Gentleman here, if you could state your name and a brief question.
My name is Aldo Chinfrinian with the Ministry of Education, and I don't want anything thrown at me just by saying that. But I do want to add, Pat, that 33 years ago when I started my teaching career, I was a tech teacher.
Oh, good.
And back to your comment about pulling shops out of schools, in actual fact, we talk about data. That's not the case. We have about 400,000 student credits in technological education, grades 9 to 10 in Ontario. That number has not changed much over the last 10 years. So we still have those programs in our schools. Not disputing that we don't need more resources to support those programs. Absolutely.
Is there a
the case
question?
is those programs still exist. Not
Question?
really. I could have phrased that as
No,
a
no.
question. Then it would have gotten
Thank you.
back. So just
I appreciate the information anyhow.
There is a question at the back for the gentleman. Everybody wants to get in their ad. That's what they're doing. Is there,
calling me?
is there a question? Have we got the mic for the gentleman in the back? At the far, that's it. There we are. There we are.
Hello, my name is Robin Roy. I work for a company that provides recruiting and labor management services up in Northern Ontario. One of the questions that is often asked to me by employers that I deal with is that they run into a situation where they don't even have enough journeymen or experienced people themselves to fulfill the ratios that are required for an apprenticeship program. We have data coming out of our ears telling us that there's going to be a large segment of the skilled trades retiring in the next 5 to 10 years. What can be done to encourage those retirees coming out helping apprentices or helping smaller or medium-sized companies fulfill the ratios that are required? Because it's not much use to have an apprentice. You can't hire an apprentice if you don't have enough skilled labor to help train them and allow them to complete their apprenticeship.
Good question. Sarah, do you want to jump in?
That is something, and we are hearing that across the country. So that's not a unique issue. There are a couple of the provinces that allow for somebody with experience who's not necessarily certified themselves. This would be in the voluntary trades, obviously, can actually be considered to be appropriate to sign off on registered apprenticeship agreements, still signing off on those skills. So that's one way that we're seeing the provinces adapt to that, is by actually opening up the definition of who is an appropriate mentor for an apprentice. In addition to that, we do see, a lot of work being done around trade qualification. It's trade qualifiers do have the opportunity, with experience in the trade, experience in the job, to be able to write the exam and be certified so that they would be appropriate. Appropriate mentors for apprentices. Again, that really only works in the voluntary trades. But we have to recognize that apprentices someone who's gone through the apprenticeship process is actually more likely to be able to be successful on their exam. And the trade qualifiers, while that's a route, they have some challenges in terms of wanting to write the exam, for that matter, but in terms of being able to get their certification. So we do need to find, I think, some solutions. One of the solutions is the one you mentioned about taking people who have retired and have them more engaged in workplace training, particularly for small and medium-sized businesses. In Newfoundland, they have a program where they allow for a journey person mentor to be paid by the government, and they would have a larger ratio of apprentices that are able to work with someone dedicated to being a trainer and a mentor. And that opens up opportunities to bring in somebody who has perhaps retired and wants to be engaged, and then have 5 apprentices where they are mentoring them full-time in the workplace. So I think that there are a number of different solutions being put in place to the question you're asking. I think it's now a matter of thinking about, so where do those shortages exist, and what's the right solution for that particular trade, that particular jurisdiction.
Pat, did you have?
Yeah, I agree with what Sarah said there. I don't have a problem with people that retire coming back and being mentors to help with your ratio issue. I don't think the ratio issue is a total issue, even though that it seems to be the buzzword around the province. But we just went through a ratio review for all the trades over as part of our mandate within the first year of our operation, and that was done through a review panel. It wasn't done by the college, and it was done through a process where people were allowed to present why they feel the ratio should go up or why they feel the ratio should go down. In 14 out of the 33 cases, the ratio did go down, okay? And I'm sure that going forward, they're going to be reviewed every 4 years. You're going to continue to see that happen even more, because there is going to be a need for the tradespeople, and you just can't wait. And that's the issue, you can't wait. But for the 130 trades in the province of Ontario that are voluntary trades, a lot of times there is no ratio at all, yet we don't see an abundance of apprentices. So you're talking about a remote area, and that could be a solution up there, like Sarah said. But I still think we have a problem getting these numbers together. Where are these jobs? Where are these people? Like, there is people that are laid off in the southern Ontario that maybe should want to go north, you know, and they don't know about these jobs. So I don't know how to answer that.
Did you want to jump?
Nope,
okay.
I think that's fine.
There's a question at the back, yes. Gentlemen?
Hi, I'm Bob Lerman from the United States.
Good.
American University at Urban Institute. Quick, you're doing a lot better than we are, for one thing. But in the 2 areas I would wonder about, one is the youth area, and whether you see doing more at the youth end, what you can do in that space, because it's a good time to be an apprentice when you're fairly young for various reasons. And the second is just even the naming of this conference on the skilled trades kind of moves it toward a limited range of occupations. Now the Ontario College of Trades does have a large number of occupations, but how do you view broadening the range of occupations that use apprenticeship as a mode of learning, because that's what happens in the countries that have very robust systems.
Okay. So, Serge, you want to jump in?
I think that's a very good comment, and I think there is resistance from some about broadening the apprenticeship model. I think some employers that think it's going to increase the cost is going to increase a number of issues. I think that's not correct. I think it would be probably a much better thing to actually look at broadening the apprenticeship model to other professions and other careers. I think it is going to help our economy. It's going to help the young people get the training that they need and to be successful in their careers. So you put your finger on it. We need to broaden the discussion, not just on skilled trades. There's a lot of professions in Canada where there's a demand and where we need to be acting on.
Just a quick,
Go ahead.
we have time for one more question.
Are we not going to answer that?
Oh, all right, jump in. All right, but we've only got a few more minutes. So
Okay.
make it snappy.
If you look at the Ellis chart, if you go on the Ellis chart for Canada, you'll see that there's over 300 classifications of occupations, okay? And as far as the apprenticeship model goes, we have a term up here, it's probably the same in the States, it's called intern, where you're an intern. You do your education up front, you do your internship after. In some cases you get paid, in some cases you don't. I think they all should get paid. I think you should, if you're going to take the apprenticeship model, I think everyone should get at least minimum wage if they're doing an internship. But in Canada, they get free labor. My daughter went through it as an x-ray tech for 1.5 years. And she worked in a unionized, like a hospital, as an x-ray tech, and got no money whatsoever. Yet there's other internships where they do get a minimum wage or some monetary amount of money. And that's basically a backward apprenticeship. You got your training and education up front, now you get your hands-on for a year and a half. And there's different models for, and I don't care what you take, whether you're a lawyer or an articling lawyer, you're the same thing. You take your 4 or 5 years of law school and then you article, right? Which is like a backwards apprenticeship. My son took a mechanical engineer. He thought, how come I'm not getting $100,000 or $200,000? I said, because you're doing a backwards apprenticeship. He's doing fine now, 5 years on the job out there. He's getting more exposure, more knowledge. Okay. So I think we already have that model. It's just called internship.
I would like to answer that, yes. But I will, maybe we could connect
give a quick response now so everybody can
I think, well, in terms of the youth, I would ask, is the question about trying to get younger people to start an apprenticeship, or is it about trying to speak better to youth about opportunities? That's just a question I had about your comment about youth and apprenticeship. In terms of expanding apprenticeship into other occupations, I think that there's a cultural issue around employers believing that that they are not really a part of the education system. The education is something that you go and do, and then you should be delivering to me a product or an employee who has the bulk of the learning already. I'm not opposed to the idea of expanding apprenticeship into other occupations. But I think we have to deal with the idea that employers have to be intimately engaged with recognizing themselves as part of the education system before that would ever work. Because we already see issues with that in occupations where it's clear you need the hands-on training.
Okay, so we have time for one quick, gentleman at the back, and a quick question and a quick response from the panel.
Yeah, very quick question. Jeff Griffiths from Alberta, and this question's actually aimed at Pat. Any thoughts on expanding the College of Trades model and making it national, breaking down some provincial barriers and starting to register across the country?
Well, I know that, and this is from being on CAF, that all different provinces, they all got their apprenticeship boards, they're all looking at our model. But our model is based on, it's really self-funding, really, because now the Journey people are actually paying for the running of the college. When they say it was a downloading, it really kind of was, because now the compulsory trades are actually paying for the running of the college. The model's good because of the governance structure. You have your trade boards, and it's actually trades dealing with the trades issues. They raise their issues to the divisional board, which is 2 employers and 2 employees, and the divisional board is chaired by somebody off the Board of Governors. And that really replaced the MTCU, which was the ministry. And they have to respond in a certain time period, not exact number, but a fast time period, and to the issues of the trade boards. And so the structure is very good. It's a good governance model. And I think eventually you'll see other places try to take that on, because there's cost factors, cost savings. But the other side of the coin is trades get the right to self-regulation. And that promotes it to a professional level. And Alberta has a thing out in Alberta where you can get credentials in some universities, colleges out there, to get a 3rd-year degree if you have a certificate of qualification in so many years in the trade. And so that's really a backwards, like get your apprenticeship now and you can still get into university, right? And I think I'd like to see that come our way.
So Serge and Sarah, go national?
I think that it might take some time to establish what it looks like in Ontario before anybody else is very likely to take it up. I mean, there's, I think, a lot of really positive things about the Ontario College of Trades, and I think the self-regulation and the ability to take control back from the government and put it back into the hands of tradespeople is a really great concept, and it's in the delivery and in the implementation, and there are growing pains with anything new. So I would say let Ontario play with it first before you jump on board to try and solve the same problem.
Last word to Serge.
Yep, that's good.
I don't know, Serge, if you say something bad, I'm jumping in.
I'm sure you will. I would be careful before you broaden the model on the national level. I think you need to make sure first it works in Ontario properly, and I think you need to make sure that you deal with some of the issues in terms of protectionism and little issues that we can see before you put it at the national level. So first, give it a bit of time in Ontario, and then after that, look at increasing it and enhancing it.
I agree.
Well, thank you very much. I do want to thank the panel for some both interesting insights and some great ideas, so please welcome them.